Awesome. I'm your host, Angela Belford, and we're joined with my regular co-host, Sami Kinnison, who today is 30 years and 1 day old.
Woo! Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Woo! Which means I have been a parent. It's the 30th anniversary of me becoming a parent.
Of course, the most important part of this whole thing.
So funny. So today's episode is called 30, Flirty, and Thriving because we are giant dorks, and I probably just clapped in everybody's ears. Hold on. Let me do that again. Today's episode is called 30, Flirty, and Thriving because we love the movie 13 Going on 30. It is adorable. It is time travel. It's super sweet. We really adore it anyway. And so, as soon as we said we're going to do an episode about 30, Sammy's like, we have to do it 30, 30, Flirty, and Thriving. You had made a list of things. We'll get to that. Sorry. Let me jump in first and say, how are you feeling?
I think a lot of people get this question on their birthdays, be like, "Oh, do you feel older? How do you feel?" All these things. Not really. I mean, I don't know. There's kind of an element that it's not like I woke up this morning and be like, "Oh my goodness, like this new 30 glow. My knees are popping more and I'm so achy." I don't know, whatever it is. Like, nope, just 1 day older than I was before. And I don't know. So I think that there's a feeling of still the same. And also, I don't know, I'm finally glad people maybe they'll stop saying I'm a baby, be like, "Oh, you're just such a baby." But it feels like a little too optimistic to think that that's going to end right now.
Well, we were at an event the other day and somebody said, oh my gosh, 30? Wow, how do you feel? And you were like, I feel like I'm about 34 or 35. I thought that was hilarious. Want to expound on why you think that sometimes?
Oh, well, so I have at different points in my life end up in circles of people who are younger than me, end up with circles of people who are older than me. I think it's been pretty common that most people cannot guess my age. It's more likely than not. If you had no good context clues, you probably would actually not have any idea how old I am. And I was
You're
in a group.
welcome for having such great
Thank
genetics.
you. I
You're welcome.
appreciate that.
Again, let's make it
Um,
about me.
of course, of course. So was in a group of people and somebody it was like a ladies' night and they were like, "Well, I know I'm the youngest one here, and so blah 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 blah." And I was like, "Oh, well, how old are you?" And she was like, "I'm 32." I was like, "Oh, I'm 28." Um, like, and they were like, "You're 28?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're such a baby." And this like then big thing. And then my neighbor and wonderful friend Diana was like, "Guys, she has two toddlers. She's not even 28. She's basically mid-30s. Leave her alone." Um, and I so
Love Diana.
appreciate that. Thank you, Diana, if you're listening. There just was something about it that like I'm not this inexperienced, air quotes, immature 20 something that I felt like I was being accused of. I have two freaking small children. I'm basically a part owner of a small business and have a husband who does very well. And I'm very grateful for where I'm at in life. And I don't feel like I've been just a flippant 20
I
something
mean, you
that
have a rental home and a home you own. Like, yeah.
I don't feel like the stereotypical millennial 20 something that the internet likes to accuse of being lazy and not doing anything and whatever else the internet likes to say that's horrible about 20 somethings and millennials. And so at times where it's like, yeah, no, I think I'm life stage closer to people who are a little bit more in their mid to late 30s than people who've been in their late 20s. Part of that's my husband's older, so I get to like bump up with
Oh,
him.
yeah. 2 whole years.
It's 3 whole years, thank you. Um the other thing is I do think that I'm to toot my own horn. It's an episode about me, so I'm going to toot my own horn. I do think that I have more emotional maturity and growth than a lot of people who are my age,
Oh,
even people who are probably your age.
You, like, at the totally threw us under the bus too at that event, same event. You were like, I mean, they were practically babies when they had me, so I had to help raise them. And I was like, you're not wrong. So you did start as an old soul, and
Mhm.
there is an element where, because we were children having children, we were 21, that I don't think we had the typical, or maybe healthy, I don't actually know, the typical response of parents of like, oh, you're a child, we should expect less of you. We were barely figuring out our life, and so therefore want to come along for the ride. So you definitely, and then being the oldest child puts
Yep.
you in a different just natural maturity level. And to like take a little bit of responsibility, since I just said I was a baby having a baby and didn't necessarily healthy. Also, because I have been on my journey, healing journey, then I think I have, one of my friends and I, we talked about that both of our daughters were much more emotionally mature than we were at that age, and maybe than we were like at 40, because you had a better model, a better role model, um, and you took then what you saw and you did even more with it. Like pursued communication. And but I can remember you were like 3, and you were admonishing me for the language I was using, and you literally one time told me, "Don't say that word, mom. It's a bad word." You were 3, and similar time frame. What are you doing, mom? I'm going to the bathroom. Good job, mom. Like, this is 2 and 3-year-old. Like, I couldn't have. I mean, she was around a lot of Mary Kay people at that time.
Mhm.
That was the community we lived in, but still, there is some natural wiring. God blessed me with a mature soul. So I think that does help. You got a head start on some of that maturing thing.
Yeah.
So good job. Good on you.
Thanks. Thanks for the genetics and the life situation.
And you got plenty of reasons you needed to go to therapy.
Oh,
You got
yes.
plenty of we had plenty of healing we still had to do. Even with all that, there was still plenty of work that you could do on your own healing journey.
And I would say that I think that because I was modeled it, I started that younger and I was more aware like, no, I'm not perfect. I'm not where I need to be and this is fine. And I have things that I need to address and that's fine. So it wasn't this big scary thing. Okay, you have to admit, no, I am more willing. Do not, no, 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 no.
Wait.
I am
Don't.
more willing to address issues in therapy than other people who I know. Okay?
Indeed, indeed. That is true. That is true. Oh, good comparison. Let's use comparison to justify our life.
Of
I'm just
course.
saying, you started that sentence, those paragraphs with, I'm not perfect and I'm fine with that. And that makes me laugh,
Oh, okay.
because 22-year-old you, 24-year-old you was certainly not okay with not being perfect. That was one of the healing, that is part of your healing journey that you have had to go on, is actually this concept of getting over being perfect. And so,
Well,
and
and
you
I
were a
think
little bit traumatized by figuring out you were struggling with perfectionism. It's
I think also on the perfectionism, I have reflected on this about why it was a big deal to acknowledge that this was something I dealt with is because it was not 100% every area of my life. There
mm,
were plenty of times which I'm like, of course I'm a beginner. Of course I'm learning this new thing. Like I got a new job and I don't know how to do it perfectly on day 2. That makes sense. Duh, the human brain can only learn so many things and I have got to progress. So I think that there were times where it was conflicting because it would be like, well, if I was a perfectionist, then I wouldn't be able to give myself this grace in this situation. And that's not necessarily like, oh, cool, good on you. Good gold star you get that you're not every single situation holding yourself to an unrealistic standard. A plus, Sammy. And I don't know, there's just an element where because of that, I felt like I was able to like be a little bit more in denial because look, I have this evidence that shows I'm not a perfectionist. I think that's really where it was, is that there were areas that I could give myself grace.
mm,
Yay, I'm not a perfectionist. So I yes, acknowledging and I also then the flip side of things where Sometimes it's not always realized that being a perfectionist can be not doing things and procrastinating and being really lazy with something. I'm like, see, I'm not a perfectionist. I'm not over here killing myself to get this thing done. And it's like, yeah, but do you know that the reason that you're not over here killing yourself to get it done is because of perfectionism? The reason why, in case you're not
Wait,
there, is there is an element of if I can't do it perfectly, I'm going to find ways to set up the situation so that it's okay that it wasn't perfect. For example, I started the project the day before it was due. Of course, it's not perfect. That makes sense. I only had 1 day to do it, not the 4 weeks that I was supposed to have. If I had used all 4 weeks and then it wasn't perfect, what a worse
are
rejection
you
it
saying
would
that
be.
procrastination is actually a symptom of
Oh, yes,
perfectionism?
that is what I am saying.
Just
And
wanted to draw the conclusion real fast, real hard for
yeah,
somebody.
sometimes choosing not to do things or being lazy is because if I'm like, well, I know I can't do it perfect, so I'm not even going to face the rejection and I won't even do it. So, even more than procrastination, just not doing something
Mm.
is
Avoidance,
also
denial.
also
Yeah.
symptoms of perfectionism. And
Yeah.
it's really hard to be like, oh, I'm not a perfectionist because I just cannot do things. And that's fine with me. I just won't do my homework. I won't do this other thing. I won't do that thing. Nope, it's all still. Anyway, yeah, so that was my
Yeah,
20s is
well,
really grappling with perfectionism.
and I would say that in America, it is socially acceptable to
Oh,
pursue
yeah.
perfectionism. I mean, we are the culture that values people overworking, overdoing, over everything.
Yeah,
I mean, very
trying
Puritan culture we got going on here. Still, 250 years later.
trying to recover from a perfectionism within our society feels a little bit like being an alcoholic who's sober to and working in a bar. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to be sober and I'm going to be the bartender serving everybody else.
Yep.
Really tricky. So,
But besides perfectionism, you have been on your journey sooner than everyone else.
yeah.
I think
Y-
that's true. I think that there's an element where and depending on your circumstance, I know of one person whose parents convinced them they were perfect. They believed it and they bought into it, and they really didn't think they needed a healing journey because they were amazing. Their mommy said so. So that's an
Mm.
interesting. Your mom didn't. Your mom told you at 12. I'm gonna write down what actually happened because you're gonna need some therapy. So
12-year-old me definitely received that super well. Um, Speaking of being a perfectionist and my recovery journey from that, I made a list of 30 things that I was going to do before I turned 30 when I was
yes.
29. And then I kind of stopped and didn't really care. I didn't really do any of the things on the list. It's not true
My
that I didn't
cats
do
want to be on
anything.
the podcast today. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Keep going.
So I didn't really do any of the things on this list.
You
I
did.
actually no, I did do. Let's see, I did one, two.
Name those two that you did.
I created a skincare routine,
Yes, you did. Hmm.
and I was really good at maintaining my skincare routine up until all of my skincare products got lost in my luggage in Dallas when I came back from San Diego at the end of July, and have not done my skincare routine for the last month coming up into
But they just
30th
found
birthday.
it.
They
So
did find it. I
happy
will get my
birthday to
bag
you.
soon. Could I have just bought new things?
That's
Probably,
okay.
but
You had a
whatever.
lot going on. No problem.
11 of 12 months. Check. Skincare
That's
routine.
good.
The other thing that I did was, um, let's see, travel solo. I
Yep.
traveled in May solo to Kansas City. Here are some of the
You
things I didn't do. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say you also, even though it's sort of kind of, but you traveled solo to see me in Ohio, so you at least got a little bit of
That's true.
something. Yeah. Go ahead.
Some of the things that I didn't do: do something for 30 days in a row.
You did
Didn't.
that skincare routine.
Oh, well, so my skincare routine is every other day.
Oh golly. Okay, never mind. Keep going.
It's a routine. It is
It's
every
a
other
routine.
day. I don't do it every day, but it's better than doing nothing. Thank you for these genetics that I don't have to do something every day. I'll take it. Um, do something that scares you. I mean, I'm sure I probably did that, but not with the intention and purpose of completing something on the list to
That
do
doesn't
that.
matter. That's the whole point of writing down your goals, is that when you write down your
Oh,
goals, you get them in your brain and you will actually go and start doing the things without a lot of, you don't have to be focused on it every single day. So I disagree. I think you have done the things that scare you because I know some of the stuff that you're pursuing with our new professional development services.
sure. I also realized I did do this next one, take a class. We took a pottery
Yes.
class, and I've taken several sales classes,
Yep.
different things like that. So there's three things: travel solo, four, learn violin. Would love to do that. Relearn violin is what it is because
Yeah.
I knew violin for 3 months in high school, and I kind of wanted to
Yeah.
pick it back up. Take 30 yoga classes. I took zero yoga classes. I did yoga at home at least 30 times, and by do yoga I mean I just stretched. Engage in a new creative medium. One could argue that my pottery was that. Write 30 blogs or articles, send 30 letters, compliment myself out loud every day for a year. I was really good at that for about 2 weeks and then kind of forgot about it. Hot air balloon ride, do a freestanding handstand, and go to a drag show.
Oh, well, here's what I would say about.
Also, if you want to know, the list was 30 things before I turned 30. It's about 13 that I came up with. I didn't even my perfectionism, I didn't even come up with 30 things to do before I turned 30. I kind of was like, good enough. I've come a long way. Let's talk
You are
about this.
cracking me up. That is hilarious. So many levels. That's hilarious. But here's what I know. Last week we talked about goal setting as an experiment. And so what I know is that you could decide, oh, instead of 30 things before 30, this is 30 things after 30.
Yeah.
And you could pursue this for the next year. You might also adjust because compliment yourself out loud every day for a year seems like a lot. So
Yeah.
perhaps maybe you could say, I'm going to compliment myself out loud every work day, right?
The
It's
intention behind that is more positive affirmations towards myself.
1000%. I
The
love it.
the other thing that I want to circle back to and just give myself the pat on the back, when I was coming up with the list initially, it was difficult because I have done a lot of things in my life. And so I have lived a very full life. And so thinking about even like bucket list items and other things like that sometimes is kind of a harder question for me because
Because, oh, you want to go to Europe? Check.
I've
Couple of
already done
times,
these things.
several
Like
things.
I have accomplished a lot of these things. And so, go skydiving. I've done that. Go do
Yeah,
these other
you were
things.
saying you did some Google searching and you did some chat work to try to come up with 30 things. And a lot of, so perhaps maybe you could turn this also into a success celebration. And
Mhm.
of those things that you've done before you were 30, you could actually make that list to celebrate as well of
Right.
like, been skydiving, been to Europe, been to on a mission trip to,
Mhm.
wherever. Um,
Right. My number of countries traveled to right now at 30 is pretty high, it feels like. I mean, I guess high in comparison to the number of countries in the world, no, but I'm over 10, and very proud of that, that by 30, I've been to 10 different countries. I will say even the next season of life, sort of the next decade, there are goals I have for my family. So I
right.
want to take my kids overseas. I want to, um, yeah, that's the one that comes to mind. I want to take my kids overseas and different things like that that I want to experience with my family and in that context. I also, some of these goals and intentions, like do yoga 30 times, is because I want to be flexible. I want to commit to moving my body in different ways and in ways that feel enjoyable to me. The fact that I didn't do 30 yoga classes doesn't bother me because I did a lot of moving my body in different ways, and this is sort of where when I set sort of the big, what's the intention behind it? What am I wanting my life to look like? Those goals I feel really solid about. Some of these very specific ones, I actually don't really care that I didn't hit it in that way. Because
Right.
the bigger intention of moving my body regularly, I did hit that goal.
Mhm.
Not doing it in 30 yoga classes, whoop-de freaking do, because went about it in a different way than what I thought. That's fine with me. I will say, 30, flirty, and thriving. My one question, what after I was like, we should do this. This is great. I mean, 30, check. I know how we're talking about that. Thriving, check. I actually feel like I've talked about that a lot. We talk a lot about what's the difference between surviving and thriving. And a lot of the ideas and concepts that we try to recommend on this podcast is really about how to move from survival from surviving to thriving. Flirty, is not in the sense of 13 going on 30. I'm not out here flirting with a bunch of different people doing all the things, but I do love my relationship with my husband and I feel very flirty with him. Um, that part's great.
I
What were
was
you
just
gonna
gonna
say?
say, that's what I was gonna say, is you actually are very flirty with your husband. It's super sweet. It's very exciting and encouraging as a parent to see that, like, the toddler years are hardest on a marriage, and so to see you guys being playful and fun um and prioritizing that relationship it's super awe inspiring as somebody who
Mm.
had a bunch of toddlers at the same time.
Well, and it is easy to give in to the terrorist negotiations that happen on a regular basis.
You mean toddler negotiations?
Oh, sorry, is that not what I said?
You said terrorist.
That's what I meant.
It's like you're held hostage.
Yes. And definitely a whole lot of Stockholm syndrome because you're in love with your captor, but also you're being held captive. Um, I don't know what to do about it, just sort of is.
That's
Um,
hilarious.
and I think that we have always had like games and competition as just a fun part of our relationship. And even there are times that we make jokes that are above the kids' heads. We are competing with each other in front of other people. We go visit in-laws and family and try to find ways to like have our own personal games that are happening in the midst of everything else. I don't know. I adore my relationship right now. And I actually think that is a really big deal because 4-ish years ago is when I started going to therapy after Henry was born, and when we started going to marriage therapy, because I could not foresee. I was like, "We are headed down a trajectory where we're not going to be together forever. We're not there yet, but the trajectory, like looking down the path, this is not gonna last forever." And so we took action and we did something about it then. We went to marriage therapy prior to the crisis because I could see the crisis coming. Like, Titanic headed for an iceberg. Can we go steer somewhere else? And I mean, golly gee, more than I could ask for or imagine where I'm at these days. So I'm really grateful for that. So you're right. Flirty is also big old check for that one. Look at me doing way better than what's her name in 13 going on 30, who kind of had her life as a mess. So here's to the next decade and seeing what happens.
Okay, so this is all lovely and amazing and rah rah, awesome, Sammy. What advice would you give to somebody who's like, ugh, ugh, I don't feel like I have it all together?
Oh, that's a good point. I would also say that your 20s is in your 20s, it's like, oh, 30 is old. No way, man. 30 is like, okay, finally I've had some chance to learn some things about life and adulting and all of this stuff. And now I can put it into practice, or now I can continue to learn. I also think that a lot of these timelines that society and culture puts on us, they're completely made up. It's all fake. So
Well,
make your own
time is
timeline.
fake.
Yes, it
There's
is. Time is
actually
literally fake.
it's there's not it's not a thing. It's we just as humans want us to be able to, put segments into our life, and
My
you can
question for
use the
you
gal the calendar or not.
My question for you, Angela, you've been 30 and 40. What advice do you have for somebody entering their 30s?
I've also been 50 for
I know.
a year and a half now.
Sorry.
No. Well, the reason why I say that is because someone posted on our wall, um, 40 is the old age of your youth, and 50 is the youth of your old age. And I have found that to be true, and it's super encouraging and a lot of fun. What I would say about going into your 30s, I remember you and Josh took me to dinner. I don't remember if Lexi had soccer or what, but the two of you picked me up from the airport after my 40th birthday, and we went to dinner. And sorry, my brain is frying out with this story because I remember us having a birthday party for me at 40. And I remember who was there, but then I remembered this. So I don't know if we had the birthday party early because I was going to be out of town, whatever it was. But you guys specifically said, Mom, how do you feel about being 40? And I said, would you, or do you wish you were younger? And I'm like, no. My 20s, I was trying to figure out who I was. My 30s, I spent trying to prove who I was and prove I was enough and prove I had what it take. I am absolutely looking forward to the freedom of the 40s. And so what I would say is you don't have to let that be your timeline. Just like Sami has kind of expedited and shrunk her timeline, compressed time, and been able to get ahead of things, I think you can compress time. And so if you don't feel like you have it all together, welcome to humanity. I've literally spent some time in the last few months. I would wake up and say, okay, what would someone who I had a thought that I'm like, man, you just need to get your crap together. And I would say, well, what would somebody who had their crap together do in this scenario? Well, if I were someone who had their crap together, I would get out of bed. I would go to bed on time. I would do these things. And after a few weeks, I was like, oh, look, I've been acting like somebody who has their crap together. Maybe, just maybe, brain. Maybe I am somebody who kind of has their crap together. And I'm just a human who sometimes also gets tired and sometimes gets lazy and sometimes needs to rest and sometimes just is having an off day and doesn't do the thing. And maybe my goals change and all of those things. So I would say do not let a date hold you back because I was 21, Sammy was 24 when we first became parents. And that has created a different trajectory. By the time I was 26, I had 3 children. That's a whole different level of overwhelm at 26 when I barely got a prefrontal cortex. And I would say number one, give yourself some grace. I would say number two, enjoy what you can. I remember when there was I think it was Josh's senior year, and Lexi and Josh were both traveling. They were in traveling sports, and it was going to be insane, absolutely insane. And I told Barry, I said, no complaining about this season because literally we are 1 year away from this dramatic change in our life when we will only have one kid left at home. We are not going to complain. And it was fast and it was furious. And I would be tired and I would be sitting at a football game or I'd be sitting at a soccer game and I'd be freezing and I'd be hungry. And I'm like, this is the life that I've chosen. This is the life that I've chosen. This is the life that I've chosen. And I then when it was over, I cried. I cried because that season and that chapter was over. So as best you can, try to be in it. I will
Mm.
also tell you that on my last vacation, the one that I went to Europe, which we actually haven't talked about, um, prepping the paragliding episode for you guys, but I tried really hard to be present, and there was a little bit of times that I made myself miserable being present because when I'm on vacation, I love to think about the future and I love to plan, and I realized that like, ooh, I don't at this moment I don't feel like being present. There are times when I just want to sit and read my novel, and there are times when I want to explore. And so really getting in tune with, I think this is going to come back to last week's episode, but practice figuring out what you want. build out that list. And maybe your list is not, what am I going to do? I think there was some pressure with you. What can I do in the next year? And that puts some parameters on that, because you're like, I've already planned all of my international travel for the next year, so I can't add some other thing on my list, right? And so perhaps maybe give yourself a little more runway to kind of plan those things out. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say.
I love that. That's great. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on my birthday episode, celebrating me turning 30. And until next time, hope you guys have a great rest of your day and go be freaking awesome.